Some of the new trends that we're seeing in service learning, which I think are very exciting, very interesting to me, is a focus more on critical service learning. And this has to do with taking a look at the relationship between communities and schools and universities, taking a look at the power relationships, the issues of equity and privilege. And although they've always been part of service learning, we haven't really focused as in depth in those issues as we should have. And I'm seeing more and more work in this area, and I think that's very exciting. I think it's very exciting because one of the areas that we need to do much more work in is to assess the impacts of service learning on the community. We've been doing a lot of great work on looking at the impact on students, looking at the impacts on institutions, schools, universities, but not so much on the community. And I think understanding this notion of critical service learning, looking at these issues of the relationship around power and privilege, are really going to help us understand the way service learning impacts and doesn't impact the communities in which we work. So I think that's very, very exciting. Another area where I'm seeing promising trends is in the area of using big data. The research is becoming much more elaborate in terms of the sample sizes. We're looking at many different programs simultaneously. We're starting to see meta-analyses where we're taking a group of research studies that have been done on the same topic and studying looking at the overall outcomes that have come of that, and this use of larger data sets, and looking at how to have a more collective view of service learning, not just the project here or project there, but when we bring projects together, what is the overall impact for students and communities and schools. So that's very exciting, and that's another trend that I see. And then with that, I think we're seeing deepening methodological issues, more sophisticated methodologies in the research. And this is very exciting to me. We've tended to have very, I think, simple methodologies where we have program and then we look at impact. But really, we know that the impacts go through various steps. We have mediators, so service learning affects certain mediators that then affect certain outcomes, and the methodologies are becoming more sophisticated. We're seeing hierarchical linear models, we're seeing structured equation models that really look at relationships and pathways, and that's very exciting because it really helps to explain how service learning works and where we're seeing the impacts and where we don't. And that just provides a greater understanding overall. I think some of the key issues and challenges that we face in service learning are really at the primary and secondary school level, especially in the United States, where we've had about 10, 12 years of educational reform efforts called the No Child Left Behind Act, which we had such a wonderful, robust service learning experiences in the 90s, 1990s to early 2000s, and then with the new Education Reform Act in the early 2000s, this No Child Left Behind, which focused on testing and accountability. Service learning kind of went by the wayside. Much of it was because we approached education with a one-size-fits-all model, very didactic, teacher-centered, which really didn't provide the space for service learning to thrive. And a lot of the gains that we had made early on were diminished. And I think that's been a real challenge now to rebuild the K-12 programs. We're seeing it picking up again now that we're moving towards some new reform efforts, and I'm very excited about that. And the good news is that at the university level, service learning has grown tremendously in the United States, and I know that's happening all across the globe. And I'm happy that primary and secondary schools in other countries are embracing service learning and continue to in a full way. And I hope that we in the U.S. can learn from other countries as well. I'm also seeing a broader involvement of community members in the development of service learning programs. Early on in service learning, because we wanted to give it academic legitimacy, Much of it was centered on faculty involvement or teacher involvement, school involvement, and organized by the schools, organized by the teachers. And that's still the case, but more and more we're seeing the importance of bringing the community partners in the development, in the implementation, and in the evaluation of our service learning programs. And I think that's still, I think, a challenge that we face, and we're starting to see that trend. But I think that's a very difficult thing to do, because it requires faculty and educators to give up a little bit of control, right? And that can be a real challenge sometimes, because we feel responsible for our students in our classrooms, and so letting go of that control sometimes can be a little scary. And I think another challenge, and a challenge that we've been facing for a long time, is doing quality service learning and doing service learning in depth. We have a lot of, I would say, superficial service learning. Certainly in places like Latin America and other places of the world, we do a lot of wonderful in-depth service learning. But in other parts of the world, sometimes we tend to do very superficial service learning. So building quality service learning continues to be a challenge. It's hard work, and it's not easy to do. So to be able to do that takes time and energy and investment, and that continues to be a challenge, because people, especially educators, their plates are very full, and they're very taxed already. And so to have to take the extra step to do quality service learning sometimes can be very, very difficult. Some of the optimal conditions for adopting improvements for service learning, I think a basic tenet is authenticity. I think service learning really thrives and improves, and we do quality work when it's authentic. I'm not a big fan of individual institutions that say we should do service learning, and then it's faculty feel that they have to do service learning, and so they say, I have to do service learning, so let me create something. I think service learning can really achieve its potential when it's based on authentic needs, authentic issues, when there's problems that arise, and we say, let's use service learning as a method for doing it. And I think that's an optimal condition that needs to be met. And when we have that, it's so powerful and so exciting to see. Intentionality is another, I think, very important optimal condition. Intentionality about why we're doing what we're doing. And I'm always fascinated that when I ask professors or others, why you do this, and they say, well, it's good for students. Well, to me, that's not enough. There needs to be much more intentionality about the learning objectives and the community needs. So having that intentionality is key to having an optimal condition to improving the work that we do. Certainly the relationships that we have with communities and trust, and it's not just the community being a site for service learning, but really being a partner. And it's really, I think service learning is really built on relationships. That's really what it's about. It's not necessarily the work, it's not necessarily the projects, but it's the relationships that come out of all that work. And I'd say campus leadership and school leadership is essential for making this work. It has to be validated, it has to be legitimate. Teachers, instructors, faculty members have to feel that the leadership values it, they're going to be rewarded for it. And as a vice president for a university that promotes this work, I know I take that role very seriously, and I know how important it is for those who do this work to know that the leadership is behind them and behind this work. And then lastly, some of the challenges and difficulties in improving this work, I would say, is getting everyone in the partnership to move in the same direction. This is a collaboration, and everyone has great ideas, and sometimes we don't see eye to eye on all these things. So a great challenge is taking the time to come up with some agreements, come up with some consensus if possible, so that we can all move in the same direction. And it just requires some time, and I think that can be off-putting sometimes when people say, we're spending too much time trying to collaborate and not doing the work. But that collaboration becomes essential for being able to do the work well. And I think another challenge for improvement is sometimes it's very difficult to tell a colleague or to tell a student or to tell a community partner that it's not working or it's not going well, or what we did was not the right thing to do, or was disrespectful to a community, or we want people to participate. We want them to enjoy the experience and have a good experience, and especially when working with partners, we're asking them to be part of something, but sometimes it's not the best partnership, and it's hard to tell someone who's put in a lot of time and energy to say, this isn't working and this isn't right. And I think that's where trust and relationship and clear expectations from the beginning become important to being able then to be honest and open with individuals. And I would just say, lastly, the service learning is not perfect. Things don't always go the way we expect or plan. In fact, they usually don't go the way we expect and plan. And that could be very frustrating. That could be very difficult and challenging. We put in a lot of time and energy to do things a certain way, and then we have to change the course because it's no longer feasible to do it the way we planned. And I think that could be very, very challenging, disheartening for people. I've seen people give up to say, forget it, I don't like this service learning because it's just too messy, too difficult. And that can be a challenge. I think people have to realize that from the very beginning, that these things are going to happen. There are going to be incidents that are going to change the course, and that's natural and normal for most service learning experiences. And so having that clear upfront expectation, I think, could be really helpful. And ultimately, it's about being able to stay the course and not give up, because the quality service learning experiences don't happen the first semester or the first year or even the first couple of years. But the ones that are truly spectacular and special are the ones that we see where they build partnerships over 5 and 6 and 7 years. That's not to say that a semester service learning can't be a wonderful experience and impactful, and I've seen many of those, but the ones that really last a long time and have real depth and intensity to them can really be truly amazing and powerful experiences. So those are just some of my thoughts I wanted to share.